The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with the sound of 1,000 different species talking at once. Admiral Sarah Chen stood at the center of the massive circular room, her hands clasped behind her back as alien dignitaries pointed and whispered around her. The humans had finally been granted permission to address the Council, something that had taken 3 years of diplomatic negotiations to achieve. Silence. The voice of Chancellor Vextai boomed across the chamber, the massive insectoid being clicked his mandibles as the room gradually quieted. The human delegation will now present their request. Sarah stepped forward, her boots echoing on the crystalline floor. She had practiced this speech hundreds of times, but standing here before representatives of over 200 worlds made her heart race. The fate of humanity hung in the balance. "Honored members of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. We come before you today not as conquerors, but as protectors seeking to join your noble alliance." A series of clicks, chirps, and electronic translations filled the air as her words were processed. From the upper galleries, she could hear what sounded suspiciously like laughter. "The humans wish to contribute to galactic defense?" The question came from Ambassador Krelock, a tall reptilian being whose scales shimmered blue-green under the chamber's lights. "What could your primitive species possibly offer?" Sarah maintained her composure despite the insult. "We offer our fleet, our technology, and our commitment to protecting innocent worlds from the growing threat of the Void Syndicate." This time, the laughter was unmistakable. It started from the Thraxian delegation and quickly spread throughout the chamber. Even some of the more diplomatic species seemed amused. "Your fleet?" Chancellor Vextai leaned forward, his compound eyes focusing on Sarah. "We have reviewed your military capabilities. Your largest vessel is barely 3 kilometers long. Our destroyers are larger than your battleships." The holographic display above the chamber activated, showing images of human warships. The assembled aliens pointed and chittered at what they clearly saw as primitive toys. "The humans operate with chemical propulsion and nuclear weapons," continued Ambassador Krelock. "Their armor is made of refined metals, not quantum lattice composites. Their weapons fire projectiles instead of pure energy. They are centuries behind our most basic technologies." Sarah felt her jaw clench but forced herself to remain calm. "Size and technology are not everything, honored ambassadors. Sometimes experience and determination matter more." "Experience?" The voice belonged to War Speaker Thalnox, a being that looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank. "What experience could you possibly have? Your species has never faced a real galactic threat. You have fought only among yourselves on your single world." "That is not entirely accurate," Sarah replied. "We have encountered and defeated Void Syndicate raiders on 17 occasions over the past 2 years. The chamber erupted in what could only be described as alien snickering. War Speaker Thalnox's trunk-like appendage swayed as he spoke. "Raiders? You fought off some pirates and consider yourself warriors? The Void Syndicate you encountered were probably defectors stealing scrap metal." Chancellor Vextai raised one of his upper arms for silence. "Admiral Chen, we appreciate your enthusiasm, but the Galactic Council requires members to contribute meaningful military strength. Your entire fleet could not match a single one of our dreadnoughts." Sarah took a deep breath. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but the Council was forcing her hand. "With respect, Chancellor, I believe you underestimate human capabilities." "Prove it," came a voice from the crowd. Sarah couldn't identify the speaker, but soon others picked up the challenge. "Yes, let them prove it. Show us what humans can do. Test their mighty armada." Chancellor Vextai clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "Very well. We shall arrange a demonstration. The Corvin system has been under Void Syndicate control for 3 months. Our intelligence suggests they have a moderate force there, perhaps 50 ships total. If your human fleet can liberate Corvin, we will consider your application more seriously. Sarah nodded. We accept. Excellent. War Speaker Thalnox rumbled. This should be entertaining. How many ships will you bring to face their 50? That depends, Sarah replied carefully. What level of collateral damage is acceptable? The question seemed to confuse the assembled aliens. Ambassador Krelock's head tilted. Collateral damage? The system is already lost. Use whatever force necessary. In that case, Sarah said, we'll bring our full battle group. How many ships is that? Chancellor Vextai asked. 12. The chamber fell silent for a moment before erupting in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as alien laughter. Several species were making sounds she couldn't identify, but the body language was universal. They were laughing at her. 12 ships against 50? War Speaker Thalnox could barely contain his amusement. This is either the greatest act of courage or the greatest act of foolishness in galactic history. We shall see, Sarah replied calmly. Ambassador Krelock leaned forward. Admiral, perhaps you misunderstood. The Void Syndicate force includes heavy cruisers and at least 2 battleships. Your 12 vessels will be obliterated. Possibly, Sarah acknowledged, but I don't think so. Chancellor Vextai studied her carefully. You seem very confident for someone about to undertake what appears to be a suicide mission. Humans have a saying, Sarah replied. It's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. The translation systems struggled with the idiom, causing confusion among many delegates. Ambassador Krelock's scales shifted to a deeper blue. Your metaphors are unclear, Admiral, but very well. You have 72 standard hours to reach Corvin and begin your assault. We will monitor the battle from here. Understood, Sarah said. We'll begin immediately. As she turned to leave, War Speaker Thalnox called out, Admiral Chen, one more question. What is the name of your flagship? Sarah paused and looked back at the assembled council. We don't have one with us for this mission. No flagship? Chancellor Vextai seemed surprised. Then which vessel commands your battle group? The UED's Defiance, Sarah replied. She's a heavy cruiser. More alien laughter filled the chamber. A heavy cruiser leading against battleships, Ambassador Krelock muttered. The humans truly are insane. Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. You have no idea. 3 hours later, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the UED's Defiance as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. The ship hummed with activity as her crew made final preparations for battle. Around them, 11 other vessels of the United Earth Defense Force prepared for what many considered a hopeless fight. Admiral, came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Commander James Rodriguez, her second-in-command. Are you sure about this? The council members are right about the numbers. We're severely outgunned. Sarah looked out at the stars through the main viewport. James, did I ever tell you about my grandfather? No, ma'am. He fought in World War II on Earth. His unit was surrounded by enemy forces for weeks. They were outnumbered 10-1, running low on supplies, and everyone expected them to surrender. She turned to face him. But they didn't. They held their position and eventually broke out, causing massive damage to the enemy in the process. What's your point, Admiral? The enemy made the same mistake then that the aliens are making now. They looked at the numbers and assumed they knew the outcome. But they didn't understand what they were really fighting. Sarah's eyes hardened. They weren't just fighting human soldiers. They were fighting human spirit. Commander Rodriguez nodded slowly. And what are we fighting here? We're fighting for respect. For the right to stand among equals in this galaxy. For the chance to prove that humanity deserves a voice in galactic affairs. Sarah moved to her command chair. But mostly, we're fighting to show these aliens that humans don't give up. Ever. The ship's communications officer looked up from her station. Admiral, we're receiving the final intelligence briefing from Council sources. Put it on screen, Sarah ordered. The main display showed a detailed breakdown of the Void Syndicate force occupying the Corvin system. 53 ships total, including 2 battleships, 8 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 31 smaller vessels. The enemy had established a defensive perimeter around the system's inhabited worlds and was systematically stripping resources. Their battleships are each 4 times the mass of our largest vessel, reported the intelligence officer. Energy shields rated at nearly 10 times our maximum output, weapons capable of destroying our ships with single volleys. What about their tactics? Sarah asked. Standard syndicate formation, battleships at the center, cruisers forming a protective shell, destroyers on patrol, smaller ships conducting raids and supply runs. Sarah nodded. Predictable. What about their leadership? War Captain Zex Thule commands the force from the battleship Doom's Edge. He's known for being aggressive but unimaginative. Prefers direct assault to complex maneuvers. Perfect, Sarah smiled. Helm, set course for the Corvin system. Maximum speed. Aye, Admiral. As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, none of the alien observers monitoring their departure could have predicted what was about to happen. They saw 12 small ships heading toward certain destruction, led by a commander they considered either brave or foolish. They had no idea they were about to witness the birth of a legend. The journey to Corvin took 18 hours at maximum hyperspace velocity. During the trip, Admiral Chen held detailed briefings with all ship commanders, reviewing tactics and contingencies. The human fleet might be small, but every captain was experienced and every crew was trained to perfection. Remember, Sarah addressed the assembled commanders via holographic conference, we're not here to win a fair fight. We're here to win, period. Use every advantage, every trick, every dirty tactic you know. The aliens expect us to charge in gloriously and die heroically. We're going to disappoint them. Captain Maria Santos of the destroyer Vigilant raised her hand. What about the civilians in the system? Council intelligence indicates several million inhabitants on the colony worlds. That's exactly why we're going to win this, Sarah replied. The Syndicate thinks they can hide behind human shields. They're about to learn that threatening innocent people just makes us more dangerous, not less. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Corvin system, far enough away to avoid immediate detection but close enough to observe the enemy positions. The Void Syndicate force was deployed exactly as intelligence had predicted, a classic defensive formation around the inhabited worlds. Sensors are picking up 54 enemy contacts, reported the Defiance's tactical officer. They've added another destroyer since the last intelligence update. Doesn't matter, Sarah replied. Communications, open a channel to all ships. Begin Operation Hornet's Nest. The human fleet split into 4 groups of 3 ships each, with each group taking a different approach vector to the system. To outside observers, it looked like a desperate attempt to divide enemy attention. The aliens monitoring the battle from the Galactic Council chambers began taking bets on how quickly the humans would be destroyed. They didn't understand that they were watching the opening moves of the most innovative battle tactics the galaxy had seen in centuries. Admiral Chen's plan didn't rely on superior firepower or advanced technology. It relied on something the aliens had never encountered before, pure human ingenuity combined with a complete willingness to take insane risks. War Captain Zex Thule of the Void Syndicate stood on the bridge of his battleship Doom's Edge, watching the tactical display with growing amusement. The humans had actually come, just as intelligence had predicted. 12 tiny ships against his mighty fleet. Should we move to intercept them, War Captain? Asked his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Crickstall. Why rush? Zex Thule's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Let them come closer. I want to see the look of terror in their eyes when they realize how badly they've miscalculated. The human ships had divided into 4 groups, approaching from different angles. To Zexthul, it looked like panic, a desperate attempt to confuse his superior force before their inevitable destruction. "War Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead human vessel." "Put it through," Zexthul ordered. "Let's hear what these primitives have to say." The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of a human female. Her expression was calm, almost serene, which irritated Zexthul immediately. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force," the human said. "I'm calling to offer you one chance to surrender." The bridge erupted in laughter. Zexthul could hardly believe what he was hearing. "You're offering us a chance to surrender? Human, you have 12 ships. I have 54. Your largest vessel couldn't damage my shields with everything it has." "That's true," Admiral Chen acknowledged. "Your ships are bigger, your weapons are stronger, and your shields are more powerful. But you've made one critical mistake." "And what would that be?" "You've assumed this is going to be a fair fight." Before Zexthul could respond, the transmission cut out. His tactical officer immediately began shouting alerts. "War Captain, the human ships are accelerating at impossible speeds. Their engines must be overloaded." "Impossible," Zexthul moved to the tactical station. "No ship can sustain that kind of acceleration without destroying itself." But the sensors didn't lie. The 12 human ships were pushing their engines far beyond safe parameters, racing toward the Syndicate formation at speeds that should have torn their hulls apart. More disturbing, they weren't slowing down. "They're going to ram us!" Krixtal shouted. "All ships, prepare for collision!" But at the last moment, the human ships scattered. Instead of ramming the Syndicate vessels, they flew past at point-blank range, their weapons blazing. What happened next shocked every alien watching. The human weapons weren't firing energy beams or plasma bolts. They were firing what appeared to be simple metal projectiles. But these projectiles were moving at incredible speeds, and they were doing something no one expected. They were penetrating Syndicate shields. "How are they getting through our barriers?" Zexthul demanded. His science officer's voice was shaken. "War Captain, their projectiles aren't energy-based. They're physical matter moving at relativistic speeds. Our shields are designed to stop energy weapons, not kinetic impactors traveling at 30% of light speed." 3 Syndicate destroyers exploded in rapid succession as the humans' railgun rounds punched through their hulls. The remaining human ships disappeared into the asteroid field at the system's edge before the Syndicate forces could properly respond. "Pursue them!" Zexthul roared. "All ships into the asteroid field!" "War Captain," Krixtal warned. "That could be a trap." "It's 12 ships hiding in rocks," Zexthul snapped. What kind of trap could they possibly set? He was about to find out. The Syndicate fleet charged into the asteroid field in pursuit of the humans, their superior numbers giving them confidence. But the moment they entered the field, everything went wrong. The asteroids began exploding, not randomly but in carefully timed sequences that created deadly debris clouds exactly where Syndicate ships were flying. Worse, the explosions were too powerful and too precisely placed to be natural. "War Captain," the science officer called out. "The humans have been mining the asteroids. They've turned the entire field into a weapon system." "When?" Zexthul demanded. "When did they have time to do this?" "The mining charges are crude but effective," the officer replied. "They could have been placed quickly by the human ships during their initial pass through the system." More explosions rocked the Syndicate formation as carefully placed charges turned asteroids into massive fragmentation weapons. But the humans weren't finished. As the alien ship struggled to navigate the debris field, the human vessels reappeared, attacking from unexpected angles. They weren't fighting like conventional warships. They were fighting like submarines, appearing from behind cover, firing devastating volleys of kinetic rounds, then disappearing again before the Syndicate could respond. "Their tactics make no sense," Krixtal protested as another cruiser exploded nearby. They're taking enormous risks. No, Zexthul realized grimly. Their tactics make perfect sense. They're not trying to win a space battle. They're turning this into guerrilla warfare. The humans had turned the asteroid field into their domain, using their smaller ships' superior maneuverability to devastating effect. Every time Syndicate vessels tried to group up for a coordinated response, more asteroids would explode, forcing them apart. "War Captain," the communications officer reported, "we're losing ships faster than we can track. Current count shows 8 vessels destroyed, 11 damaged." "Pull back," Zexthul ordered reluctantly. "Reform outside the asteroid field." But as the Syndicate fleet retreated, they discovered the humans had another surprise waiting. The mining charges hadn't just been placed randomly throughout the field, they had been arranged to cut off escape routes. A series of massive explosions created a debris wall between the Syndicate ships and open space, trapping half the fleet inside the asteroid field with the humans. "This is impossible," Krixtal muttered. "How did they predict our movement so accurately?" Zexthul was beginning to understand that he had seriously underestimated his opponents. The humans weren't fighting with superior technology or overwhelming force. They were fighting with something far more dangerous: imagination. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council chambers, the assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the tactical display showed the unthinkable happening. The mighty Void Syndicate fleet was being systematically destroyed by 12 human ships. "This cannot be accurate," War Speaker Thalnox protested. "The readings must be wrong." "The readings are correct," Chancellor Vextai replied quietly. "The humans are winning." Ambassador Krelock's scales had shifted to a pale blue color indicating shock. "How are they doing this? Their weapons shouldn't be able to penetrate Syndicate shields." "They're using kinetic weapons moving at relativistic speeds," reported the Council's military advisor. "Crude but effective against energy-based defenses." "But the tactics," Thalnox continued. "Where did they learn to fight like this?" What the aliens didn't understand was that they were witnessing warfare as humans understood it. Not the stately, formal battles between massive fleets that had characterized galactic conflict for millennia, but the vicious, innovative, take-no-prisoners style of combat that humans had perfected over thousands of years of fighting each other. Back in the Corvin system, Admiral Chen was coordinating the battle from her command chair aboard the Defiance. Around her, her crew worked with the precision of a machine, but she could see the excitement in their eyes. They were making history. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported, "we've eliminated 22 enemy vessels. The remaining force is trying to regroup outside the asteroid field." "Good," Sarah replied. "Begin Phase 2. Signal the Valiant and the Phoenix to begin their runs." 2 of the human destroyers broke from the asteroid field, not to escape, but to attack the regrouping Syndicate forces. But instead of engaging in ship-to-ship combat, they did something that horrified the watching aliens. They rammed themselves into the 2 Syndicate battleships. But these weren't desperate suicide attacks. At the moment of impact, both human ships detonated massive thermonuclear devices they had been carrying, turning themselves into guided nuclear missiles. The explosions were visible from the outer system. When the light faded, both Syndicate battleships were gone, along with 6 other vessels that had been too close to the detonations. "They're insane," Krixtal whispered on the Doom's edge. "They're actually insane." "No," Zexthul corrected grimly. "There's something worse. They're desperate humans with nothing to lose." But Admiral Chen wasn't desperate. She was methodical. Every move had been planned, every sacrifice calculated. The human crews who had given their lives hadn't died in vain. They had eliminated the enemy's most powerful assets and broken their will to fight. "War Captain," the Syndicate communications officer reported, "the remaining fleet is requesting permission to withdraw from the system." Zexthul looked at his tactical display. Of his original 54 ships, only 18 remained operational, and most of those were damaged. The humans still had 10 ships in fighting condition, but more importantly, they had shown a level of tactical innovation and willingness to sacrifice that had shaken his forces to their core. The Void Syndicate prided itself on being ruthless, but these humans were operating on a completely different level. "Withdrawal granted," Zexthul said finally. "All ships, retreat to hyperspace." As the surviving Syndicate vessels fled the system, Admiral Chen stood on her bridge watching them go. Around her, her crew maintained their professionalism, but she could see the pride in their faces. "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez approached her. "Shall we pursue?" "No," Sarah replied. "We've accomplished our mission. The system is liberated, and we've sent a message that will be heard throughout the galaxy." "What message is that?" Sarah smiled as she watched the last Syndicate ship disappear into hyperspace. "That humanity doesn't just belong in this galaxy. We're going to help reshape it." In the Galactic Council chambers, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. The impossible had happened. 12 human ships had defeated a force of 54 Void Syndicate vessels, using tactics that defied everything they knew about space warfare. Chancellor Vextai was the first to speak. "I believe we need to reconsider the human application for council membership." "Agreed," War Speaker Thalnox rumbled. "Any species capable of such tactical innovation would be a valuable addition to our forces." But Ambassador Krelock raised a concern. "Are we certain we want allies who fight with such intensity? They turn their own ships into weapons." "That's exactly why we want them as allies instead of enemies," Chancellor Vextai replied. "Admiral Chen, when you return, we will have much to discuss." But Admiral Chen wasn't returning yet. As the human fleet regrouped in the Corvin system, she received a priority message from Earth Command. The contents made her smile. "Admiral," Commander Rodriguez asked, "what are your orders?" Sarah looked out at the stars, thinking about the message she had just received. The Galactic Council thought they had seen everything humanity had to offer. They thought 12 ships represented the full extent of human military capability. They were about to learn how wrong they were. "Set course for the rendezvous coordinates," she ordered. "It's time for Phase 3 of the plan." "Phase 3? Rodriguez looked confused. "Admiral, what aren't you telling me?" Sarah's smile widened. "James, did you really think Earth would send only 12 ships to humanity's first major galactic conflict? We're not just here to prove ourselves. We're here to make a statement that will be remembered for 1,000 years." As the human fleet jumped to hyperspace, none of the aliens monitoring their departure realized that the battle they had just witnessed was only the beginning. The real show was about to start. 3 days after the Battle of Corvin, emergency sessions were being held throughout the galaxy. The news of humanity's victory had spread like wildfire, carried by traitors, diplomats, and refugees who had witnessed the impossible. In the Void Syndicate's command center on the fortress world of Karak Prime, War Marshal Vector slammed his armored fist onto the tactical table, sending holographic displays scattering. 54 ships, he roared at the assembled officers. 54 ships defeated by 12 primitive human vessels. How do you explain this humiliation? War Captain Zexthul, who had barely escaped the Corvin system alive, stood at attention despite his injuries. War Marshal, the humans fight unlike any species we've encountered. They show no regard for conventional tactics or their own safety. Elaborate, Vector demanded. They turned the battlefield itself into a weapon, using the asteroid field as cover and ordnance simultaneously. Their weapons technology, while primitive, was specifically designed to counter our energy shields, and their willingness to sacrifice themselves... Zexthul paused, his mandibles clicking nervously. They turned their own ships into guided nuclear missiles, War Marshal. I've never seen such tactical insanity. You call it insanity, interrupted strategic advisor Nexran, a tall, thin being whose species was known for their analytical minds. I call it terrifying effectiveness. We've analyzed the battle data. Every human move was calculated for maximum impact. They didn't sacrifice themselves out of desperation. They did it because it was the most efficient way to achieve their objectives. War Marshal Vector studied the tactical display showing the battle's progression. What are our losses across all sectors? 17 of our fleets have reported human encounters in the past 72 hours, Nexran replied. The humans appear to be launching simultaneous strikes across a front spanning 40 light-years. Impossible, Vector protested. They only have 12 ships. No, War Marshal, Nexran corrected quietly. We now know they have far more than 12 ships. The force that attacked Corvin was apparently just an advance guard. The war chamber fell silent. Finally, Vector spoke. How many ships do they have? Unknown. But intelligence suggests the number could be in the thousands. While the Void Syndicate reeled from the implications of facing a much larger human force than anticipated, the Galactic Council was having its own emergency session. The council chamber, normally filled with formal debate and careful diplomacy, buzzed with urgent conversations. Chancellor Vex Tai called for order. Honored delegates, we must address the human situation immediately. In the 3 days since the Corvin battle, we have received reports of human military action in over 30 systems. 30 systems? Ambassador Krelock's scales shifted to deep purple, indicating alarm. How is that possible with their small fleet? Because their fleet isn't small, War Speaker Thalnox rumbled. Our intelligence was completely wrong. The 12 ships they sent to Corvin were apparently a test force, not their main battle fleet. The chamber's central display activated, showing a galactic map dotted with red markers indicating sites of human military action. The scope was staggering. Humanity was conducting the largest military operation the galaxy had seen in centuries. Each attack follows the same pattern, reported the Council's military analyst. Small human forces using unconventional tactics to defeat much larger syndicate fleets. They're not just winning individual battles, they're dismantling the entire syndicate military structure. Ambassador Telvar of the peaceful Altarian Confederation raised a tentacle. Surely we should be concerned about this level of human aggression. What if they turn these tactics against peaceful worlds? That's just it, Chancellor Vex Tai replied. They're not attacking anyone except syndicate forces. Every system they've liberated has been returned to local control. They're not conquering, they're liberating. But why? Ambassador Krelock asked. What do the humans gain from this massive military operation? Before anyone could answer, the chamber's communication system activated. Honored Council, we have an incoming transmission from Admiral Chen. Put it through immediately, Chancellor Vex Tai ordered. The main display showed Admiral Sarah Chen, but she wasn't on the bridge of the Defiance anymore. Behind her, through massive viewports, the assembled delegates could see something that made them gasp collectively. Ships, hundreds of them. Massive human warships that dwarfed anything they had seen before, arranged in perfect formation as far as the eye could see. Honored members of the Galactic Council, Admiral Chen began. I apologize for not mentioning our fleet's true size during our previous meeting. We wanted to test the waters, so to speak, before revealing the full extent of humanity's military capabilities. Chancellor Vex Tai found his voice. Admiral, how many ships do you have? This particular fleet numbers 843 vessels, Sarah replied calmly. But this is just one of 12 such fleets currently deployed throughout the galaxy. The math was staggering. Over 10,000 human warships, all apparently more advanced than anything they had shown previously. The delegates sat in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Furthermore, Admiral Chen continued, I'm pleased to report that Operation Liberation is proceeding ahead of schedule. We have successfully eliminated Void Syndicate presence from over 200 systems in the past 72 hours. 200 systems? War Speaker Thalnox could barely speak. In 3 days! The Syndicate's centralized command structure made them vulnerable to coordinated strikes, Sarah explained. Once we mapped their network, dismantling it became simply a matter of logistics and timing. Ambassador Krelock leaned forward. Admiral Chen, your previous ship was only 3 kilometers long. The vessels I see behind you appear to be much larger, Sarah smiled. The ships I brought to our first meeting were patrol vessels, what you might call scouts. Behind me is the UES Indomitable, our newest command dreadnought. She's 47 kilometers long and serves as the flagship for the 4th Fleet. 47 kilometers. The number echoed through the chamber as delegates tried to process the scale. The largest Galactic Council vessel was barely 20 kilometers long. But I'm not calling to boast about our fleet, Sarah continued. I'm calling because we need to discuss the future of this galaxy. The Void Syndicate threat has been largely neutralized, but this creates a power vacuum that needs to be filled responsibly. Chancellor Vexatai gathered his composure. What are you proposing, Admiral? Partnership, Sarah replied simply. Humanity has no interest in ruling the galaxy. We believe in self-determination for all species, but we also believe in protecting those who cannot protect themselves. We want to work with the Galactic Council to establish a new era of peace and prosperity. And if the Council refuses this partnership? Ambassador Telvar asked nervously. Sarah's expression didn't change. Then we'll establish peace and prosperity anyway. But we'd prefer to do it with your cooperation rather than despite your objections. The not-so-subtle threat hung in the air. Humanity had just demonstrated the ability to dismantle the galaxy's most feared military force in a matter of days. They clearly didn't need the Council's permission to reshape galactic politics. However, Sarah continued, I think you'll find our terms quite reasonable. We're not asking for territory, tribute, or subservience. We're asking for representation proportional to our contribution to galactic defense, and the right to protect innocent worlds from future threats. Chancellor Vextai knew an ultimatum when he heard one, even when delivered politely. The Council will need time to deliberate. Of course, Sarah interrupted. Take all the time you need, but while you deliberate, our fleets will continue operations against remaining Syndicate holdouts. We estimate complete pacification of their territories within 2 standard weeks. The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in absolute silence. Finally, War Speaker Thalnox spoke what everyone was thinking. We're not in charge anymore, are we? No, Chancellor Vextai replied quietly. I don't think we ever were. I think we just didn't know it yet. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's revelation were immediate and profound. Species that had lived in terror of Void Syndicate raids for generations watched in amazement as human fleets systematically dismantled pirate bases and freed enslaved worlds. But it wasn't just the military victory that impressed observers. It was how the humans behaved after their victories. Instead of claiming conquered territories, they established temporary peacekeeping forces and helped local governments restore order. Instead of demanding tribute, they provided humanitarian aid. Instead of ruling through fear, they earned respect through their actions. On the fortress world of Karak Prime, War Marshal Vector received the final reports from his scattered commanders. The Void Syndicate, which had terrorized the galaxy for over a century, was finished. Of their original 1,000-ship fleet, fewer than 50 vessels remained operational, and those were scattered across the galaxy's outer rim. War Marshal, Strategic Advisor Nexran approached carefully. We've received a transmission from the humans. What do they want? Unconditional surrender? Actually, no. They're offering safe passage to the outer rim for all remaining Syndicate forces. along with a complete amnesty for anyone willing to abandon piracy and return to peaceful occupations. Vector stared at his advisor in disbelief. They could hunt us down and destroy us completely. Why offer mercy? According to their Admiral Chen, humanity believes in redemption. They're offering us a chance to start over, provided we never again threaten innocent worlds. For the first time in his long military career, War Marshal Vector felt something he had never expected to experience: hope. The humans could have ground the Syndicate into dust, but instead they were offering a path to peace. "Send our acceptance," he ordered. "The war is over." 1 month after the Battle of Corvin, Admiral Sarah Chen stood once again in the Galactic Council chamber. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Instead of mockery and condescension, she was greeted with respectful attention from delegates who now understood exactly what humanity brought to the galactic community. "Honored members," Sarah began, "I'm pleased to report that the Void Syndicate threat has been permanently eliminated. Over 1,500 worlds have been liberated, and former Syndicate territories are being transitioned to local governance under Council oversight." Admiral Chen, Chancellor Vextai, spoke formally. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I want to express our profound gratitude for humanity's service to galactic peace. Your species has accomplished in 1 month what we failed to achieve in a century of warfare." "We didn't do it alone," Sarah replied diplomatically. "We simply brought a different approach to an old problem." "Your approach has certainly been effective," War Speaker Thalnox admitted. "We've received thousands of requests from member worlds asking for human protection fleets to be stationed in their systems. And we're happy to provide them," Sarah said, "as part of our new role as members of the Galactic Council." "About that," Chancellor Vextai continued, "the Council has voted unanimously to grant humanity full membership, with permanent seats on the Security Committee and the right to lead joint military operations." "We're honored to accept," Sarah replied. "But I should mention that this is just the beginning. Earth has authorized the construction of 50 more battle fleets, and we're establishing permanent bases in 12 strategic sectors." The delegates absorbed this news quietly. They had learned not to question human military decisions. "However," Sarah continued with a smile, "we're also prepared to share our technology and tactical knowledge with all Council members. We believe that a strong galaxy is a peaceful galaxy, and peace is only possible when everyone has the ability to defend themselves." As the formal proceedings continued, Ambassador Krelock leaned over to his aide. "Do you remember when we laughed at their 12 ships?" "Yes, Ambassador. That was possibly the most expensive laugh in galactic history." "Yes, Ambassador." Admiral Sarah Chen concluded her address to the Council, knowing that humanity had achieved something remarkable. Not just military victory, but the respect and partnership of an entire galaxy. The species that had once mocked their primitive 12-ship fleet now looked to them as protectors and leaders. But perhaps most importantly, they had proven that sometimes the smallest force, guided by the right principles and willing to take necessary risks, could change the course of history. As she left the council chamber, Sarah reflected on her grandfather's old war stories. He would have been proud to know that the human spirit he had demonstrated on Earth so many years ago had found new expression among the stars, protecting innocent worlds and ensuring that freedom and justice weren't just human concepts, but galactic ones. The galaxy was a safer place now, not because humanity had the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but because they had something their enemies couldn't understand and their allies had learned to respect: the absolute refusal to give up when fighting for what was right. And that, Admiral Chen knew, was the most powerful weapon of all.